Hey everyone, just want to do a quick initial impression review of my new Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 Optics Ready that I recently purchased. Still super new to me, so this is by no means an exhaustive review, but I've shot it enough now to have a good feel for it. A little bit of a disclaimer, I am a Glock guy. I certainly wouldn't identify as a fanboy, but to give you perspective, prior to purchasing this, the only semi-auto handguns I owned were Glocks, so I'll try to save the comparison to Glock for a later video, but forgive me if points of comparison pop up along the way. I also feel like it's worth mentioning because I was intrigued and impressed enough by this M&P to step outside of my comfort zone and get something new. I guess sort of new. This is actually the second M&P I've owned. The first being in 1.0 that I had for about a year back with the curved trigger, the old style, and really enjoyed it, but certain little things like the trigger kept me from holding on to it, and eventually I sold it, and I guess that was probably about 5 years ago now. So, with that being said, I mentioned the trigger. I kept the memory of that M&P in my mind and became interested in the 2.0 when it was released, but just wasn't a fan of that curved trigger, and I always had a Glock on my wish list that would end up getting purchased before another M&P. That finally changed when I saw that they'd released this version with the new hinge trigger in 9mm, the full-size 9mm Optics Ready. The actual model number is the 13564, so it's the 4.25-inch full-size 9mm Optics Ready. So yeah, and it had this had this dingus trigger from the factory, and basically motivated me to call up my FFL and order one. Since the trigger was a decision maker for me, I'll start with my impression of it. Overall, I think that it's a great factory trigger option. The length of pull is quite a bit shorter than I'm used to with other stuff, namely Glock, and I found myself installing the extra large back strap to put my finger where it needs to be for a proper trigger press, which for me is right here. The more I shoot this, the more I shoot in general, I've really started to focus on cadence shooting and more dynamic drills at the range. And I've discovered in doing this that I don't need a 1911 trigger that breaks like a glass rod to still make quality hits in a reasonable amount of time. This trigger is more than adequate in my experience with it. The break feels a bit more crisp with a bit less of a rolling break than my Glocks. And then the reset feels a little strange to me, as it kind of has a vague feeling and doesn't reset until you've traveled forward a good ways. But in most shooting drills, I don't really ride the reset anyway, and it isn't as noticeable as it is when I'm dry firing or in slow aimed fire where I'm really sitting there and riding the reset. Overall, the trigger felt a little foreign to the Glock shooter in me, but it's perfectly capable for a striker-fired pistol, and I think with more practice I could really grow to like it. The second feature that drew me into buying this was wanting to try Smith & Wesson's take on an Optics Ready pistol. I currently own a few MOS Glocks and was intrigued by the fact that the M&P came from the factory with optic height sights ready to go, and that the optic mounting system that Smith & Wesson provided seemed to maybe be good enough to go from the factory without having to spend another $60+ on an optic plate from an aftermarket manufacturer. So I decided to pair this with the Holosun 508T. This was new to me, hadn't mounted it on anything else, so kind of a new experience with that as well. Prior to mounting it, I was a little wary of the plastic plates and hit the forums to see what people thought of them. Overall impression seemed pretty decent, and like it was probably better than the MOS stock plates, so I decided to give it a go without ordering an aftermarket one. And also contributing to this was the fact that C&H Precision was sold out of the RMR plates at the time for the M&P. The one change I did make, though, in mounting this optic was to order some longer half-inch screws from McMaster Car to get a little bit better thread engagement and hopefully not shear off any screws, which I'd heard could happen. Once the screws arrived, I pulled out the plastic RMR footprint plate from the M&P box and went to dry fit it to the slide. When I did this, I found it to be a little wonky and it wouldn't fully seat, and didn't know why, but I looked at it closer and saw that the adapter plate had a little bit of plastic flashing from the mold process sticking off the plate and not allowing it to sit down fully into the slide. After trimming the plate in a few places, I tried again and it still wouldn't fit, and I observed a roll pin protruding from the slide, keeping the plate from going all the way down. So I had to get out a roll pin punch, tap that in to get it flush and out of the way. And at that point, finally, everything snugged up nicely, but I have to say the experience kind of soured my confidence in the plastic plate, and I eventually ended up ordering a C&H plate, the aluminum plates from C&H, which you can see mounted on it now. I never actually ended up shooting it with the plastic plate, so I really can't give any impressions at all. I'm sure it would have been fine, but like I said, it just felt a little weird at that point. As far as the C&H plate that I have on it, I won't go into depth with it, but I haven't had issues with it so far, and it seems to match the footprint of the Optic a little more closely. The stock plate had some sharp squared off edges that were sticking off up here, basically the full length of the slide cut, and kind of stuck out, might be hanging up on stuff, especially if you're planning on concealing it, so I wasn't a huge fan of that either. As far as the mount height with both the plastic and the C&H plate, I found it to be a good 1/3, lower 1/3 co-witness. I don't know how well that's coming out, but perfect sight picture in my opinion. Everything worked out real well with that. The factory sights, they're good quality. Like I said, lower 1/3 co-witness. And I really thought that these white dots, I was stoked about the Optic height sights, but I thought the white dots were going to be a little bit distracting from the sight picture. But I found that in working with it and shooting it, it really wasn't bad. So I'm not going to black them out or anything, so as of right now. Moving on from there, I'll go over controls really quick. The M&P 2.0 grip texture has been covered extensively, and I have to say I agree with the consensus. It's a little rough, but it really gives you outstanding grip. Obviously it's hot, it's summertime right now, and I was sweating when I was shooting it. It was super locked in, wasn't phased at all by sweaty hands. Personally, I'm using this extra large back strap, largely due to the fact that it gives me a comfortable length of pull with the trigger. But in experimenting with the different back straps, they all felt pretty nice. I also really like the slide serrations. The new forward serrations, so before it had just these lower ones and now it has the upper as well. They work great for manipulating the slide. It's just kind of super intuitive. It's not too sharp, but it's very effective. And in my opinion, they look really good. The slide stop and slide release, that's kind of hasn't changed from the other M&P 2.0s, but it was new to me since my previous experience was just with the 1.0. It was super stiff out of the box, took a lot of effort, but it has loosened up quite a bit and it's easily workable now. And I do appreciate the fact that the slide doesn't auto forward like 3 times out of 4 like my original M&P did. I won't go too in depth on size and weight and all the other things that a lot of reviews seem to hit pretty hard, but I will say that the fact that this pistol only ships with 2 magazines is a little disappointing, especially when I looked at the price of the OEM mags, which was, I believe, $40 per, not including shipping and tax and all that. I do feel like they're high quality mags though, and I like how they drop free. Also appreciate this mag release. I feel like it's the perfect size, doesn't stick out too far, but it's effective. Overall impression shooting it, I don't have any video of that or anything yet. Still kind of working on camera and getting all of that sorted out, but overall I'm very happy with it. I found it to be real flat shooting and somewhat softer and slower recoil push than similar sized Glocks. The rise and fall of the dot through recoil was very predictable, and I found that pushing the pace with it was fairly easy. Interestingly, despite the more vertical grip angle, I found myself actually presenting the pistol with a high sight picture rather than lower, which you would expect from years of canting my wrist further forward with Glocks. So not really sure why that was, but I had to work through that a bit. All in all, I think this pistol is great and would feel comfortable recommending it to anybody looking for a fairly priced optic ready duty or defensive pistol. I'll probably be keeping it for now, and we'll likely do a Glock comparison video pretty soon. If y'all have any questions, throw them in the comment section. I'll try to get them answered. Thanks.